Hello, beautiful people of the world. So I'm super excited to be here, and in this video we are going to go over how to create a responsive navigation. So this would be what it would look like on a tablet or a mobile phone, and then you can also click this Nav Toggler, and on click it is going to bring out this side panel and create a tint for readability. So to get started, we are going to go over to Visual Studio Code, and I created a folder called Nav.js, and then inside I created a index.html file. So starting off, exclamation point for our template, and we'll say navigation. All right, so now what we're going to do is I'm going to copy and paste some of the links here. So if anything isn't working, I always remind myself to make sure I have my style sheets. So we have a style.css and a add.css, which we'll see the use case for here in a little bit. And then I'm also going to, before we get started here, I'm going to add the script.js within the body section here. So let's get our files and folders set up. So I'm going to say CSS, and then within that folder I'm going to create style.css, and then I'm also going to create add.css. Okay, now that we have those two, let's create our JavaScript folder. So JS, and then within there we are going to create script.js. All right, so we're all set up here. I am going to close down. Now we can get to the HTML coding. All right, so within the body, I'm going to give the body an ID of home. We'll create some space here, and then I'm going to create a div, and then I'm going to give it ID of a tint. So we're going to be calling that when we use our Nav Toggler. Okay, let's go to the header. And within the header, we are going to create a comment here, and we're going to say Nav Toggler hamburger. All right, now we're going to create a div with the class of Nav Toggler. And then we are going to give it on click, and then assign it toggle nav. All right, so now within this div, we're going to put a span. I'm going to save that. And so here within I'm using live preview extension so I can see a updated version in the browser. and navigation, everything's coming up. So we'll minimize this and we'll use it while we add our code here. So now we're going to have a nav, the class Navbar, and then within this nav we're going to have a div container, then we're going to have a h1. This is going to be our logo, so class logo, and then we're going to have an A. So if you wanted to click on it, it would bring you back to, say, the home page. So for the logo, I'm going to say coding brew. All right. So now below this, I'm going to create an unordered list. I'll open it up, and then I'm going to give it a class of nav, and then side panel. Okay, so within this unordered list, we're going to have an li class active. Now we're going to have an A, give it a hash home, home. Okay, so now we have our first item. Let's save this and we can give it a look. There we are. So what we're going to do, let's create the next li, A. We'll just give this one a hash, and let's say development. All right, so now what we're going to do is Control C. We'll say images, icons, blog, and the last one will be subscribe. So let's save that. All right, so we have all of our navigation items. So let's scroll down here, and what we're going to do is we are going to create the landing section. So we'll call this showcase section. We'll open that up. Class section 1. All right, so within this section we are going to have a container div, then a div h1, then we're going to say hi, I am a, and then we're going to, with this text, we are going to add a color change to it. So we're going to wrap the web in a span, and and then developer. Okay. So now we're going to create a paragraph tag. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste the text in here. Okay. So we have that, and then next we're going to add a button. So that's going to be a href with the class of button, and it's going to have the text of subscribe here. So let's save this. And there we go. Looking plain Jane right now, but we're just getting started. So, all right. Now we're going to have an image. Okay, so we need to add the images folder. Images. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag over all the images here. Okay, so I put the images in the images folder, and just as a side note, I'm going to have a link in the description with the file structure and these images. So let's say source images. All right, so now that we have the image, let's save it and see. Big image, yep, okay. All right, so we have that. Now let's add in the text over image section. So we'll just get all this HTML squared away, and then we'll move on to the CSS. All right, so below the header section, this is going to be, so I'll show you where we're going to be adding this portion of the HTML code. So text over image section. We're going to say section. We're going to give a class section 2. Let's open it up and let's give us some space here. All right. So we're going to say overlay div, and then we're going to have another div, and it's going to be section 2 inner. Then we're going to have a h3, and I'm going to copy and paste this text here. So this is just going to help the beginners with, you know, making the landing page and then also being able to add on to it. So we have h2, and then we're going to add a paragraph as well below it. We'll save that. And here's our section 2. Okay, so as of right now, that is all for the HTML. Now we are going to transition over to the CSS. Okay, now that we have the HTML skeleton set up, I'm going to segue into the CSS, but first I have a completed project where we have the section, and we also have this lightbox gallery. It's really cool. You can click through it, and when you click out, it exits out. And just a really cool project that I completed. And when you expand here, it opens up, fully responsive. And with media queries, when you go above, for me, 700 pixels, it opens up the navigation. And what I'll do is I'll create a Patreon page. And if you guys want access to this code with all the JavaScript to have this beautiful lightbox, I'll have it in the link in the description. Okay, so let's get back to our project here. So let's start off with the CSS. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to import Google Fonts. So we're going to have Montserrat. And we are also going to import Font Awesome. So you guys can watch some videos on how to import these. All you have to do is set up an account. It's pretty easy, and then you just copy the links and put them in here. Okay, so starting off with the CSS, we are going to have the global asterisks, and we are just going to start off with a clean slate. We're going to give a box sizing of border box, margin of 0 and a padding of 0. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to shrink this down so we can see how things are looking as we progress through here. And let me know if you guys like this style of video, because I'm going to be trying to go through the CSS as quick as I can, just because there's a lot of lines. So for the body, we're going to say font family Montserrat, and as a fallback sans serif. So we got our new font here. If you guys have any troubles importing the fonts, just let me know in the comments. So next step, so we're going to have this tint. So remember, in the HTML, we had this div with ID of tint. This is how you call with the hash symbol and then tint. So that's how you get an ID. And we're going to give it display none, because when we utilize the Nav Toggler, we're going to change the setting, and then it's going to be a RGBA color, so it's going to be black, and then with about 75% opacity, so we can still see what's behind it. And then I'm giving it a Z index of 90, and that's think about it as layers. So we're layering it in between the side panel and the rest of the content. I'm going to say position fixed, top 0, right 0, width 100%, and height 100%. And we'll see what this looks like later on in the video. All right, now we're going to go to the header so we can look at everything that's in the header. Nav Toggler, Nav Bar, Showcase, Section 1. So we're getting all this stuff with the header. So let's look at it here. So it's going to be header position relative, height 100%, background color white, font family we're going to say Montserrat, and we're going to say overflow hidden, then we're going to give it kind of a gray, dark gray color. Alright, next is going to be the Nav Toggler. So now we have our nav toggle here, and it is going to be a height of 40 pixels, width 40 pixels. We're giving it a little bit of a solid border, cursor pointer, so when we hover over it, position is going to be fixed so it follows along with the page. Right 30 pixels, top 30 pixels, so adds a little bit of space here. Z index is going to be 1100. It's just a larger number so I can keep track. So it's on top of everything. Then we're going to give it a border radius of 5 pixels, so that gives it the little round edges there. And background color of lighter gray. It's going to be a display MS Flexbox and display flex. And then we're also going to do MS Flex Align Center, Align Item Center, MS Flex Pack Center, and Justify Content Center. Okay. So now what we're going to want to do is within this add CSS, we're going to have so I'm putting this code in here. I'll go through what exactly we're doing here a little bit. Let's add the spans to the Nav Toggler so we can kind of see how it's affecting what we have here. So all right, so we have the header, and then within the header we are going to call the Nav Toggler class, and then we're going to grab this span here. So let's go back to the HTML and look at it. So we have the header, we're going inside the Nav Toggler, and then we have this span here. And within this add HTML, so we can change the color here. So just a look, this is the item that we're working with. So let's change this back to red and save. So I'm going to have the span, this span before and the span after. So this is going to give us the hamburger effect. And that's going to be a height of 2 pixels, width of 18 pixels, display inline block, and position relative. So let's go and add the span before and the span after. Okay, so Now we have what we're looking for here. So it's going to be content, empty quotes, height 2 pixels, width 18, position absolute, top -6, and left is 0. So you can see how we're placing each of them relative to the origin span. Okay, now we're going to call section 1 dot container span, and we can look back in the HTML to see where we're at. Okay, so we have the section 1 and then the container, and then we're calling this span here, and this is going to give us the red. We're going to say color red. So this is giving us a little bit of change within our text. We're going to give all of the H's line height of 1.3. Now we're going to style the A. Text decoration, none. So now we don't have the underlines with all of the navigations. UL list style none, and now we're going to start styling the image. So we have the image width, we're going to say 80%. Now this is going to vary depending on what type of image you put in there. If you want to get it to form, when you do a border radius of 50, it's going to create this circle here. So you want to have a square image so it doesn't distort, and we're going to give it a border of 5 pixels, solid, and then it's going to be a red color. Next, we're going to have the dot container. So that's going to be max width 1100 pixels, margin auto, overflow hidden, and padding. Top and bottom is going to be 0, and then left and right is going to be 2 rem. And we can open this up and see what it looks like so far. So pretty big. Now what we're going to do is we're going to add in the nav bar. So .navbar, font size 20 pixels, padding top 0.08 rem, padding bottom 0.3 rem. Now we're going to have navbar.container. We're going to display grid, and then grid template columns repeat to 1FR. So the next step is going to be styling the nav the Navbar logo A. So that's going to be, we're going to look here, Navbar logo, and then the A tag here. So now we have a better looking logo. And what we're going to do is we are going to do a before and after. So we are going to add this styling here. So let's talk about the nav really quick. So the nav logo A, text decoration, underline, font size 40 pixels. We're giving it a dark gray color. I'm using this font instead of Montserrat. Font weight 700, display inline block, position relative, padding top and bottom 0, padding left and right 10 pixels, and line height 50 pixels. So the Navbar logo A before, we're going to have content, empty quotes, height 20 pixels, width 20 pixels, position absolute, top 0, left 0. And we can see, so we're calling, it's nice to have this add CSS, because if you have, if you're adding colors, you can just create a separate CSS for those primary colors that you're using, and you can just go in and change them like we did earlier with the background color for the hamburger. So we have the Navbar logo A before, and we're doing a border top 4 pixels, solid gray color, and border left 4 pixels, solid gray. So it creates this cool little arrow effect. Okay, so next we're going to move on to the nav bar, and it's going to be nav bar, and then we're going to be styling the nav, so all these items, so it's not so congested here. Okay, so this is key points in Nav Bar Alignment. So we have justify self, flex, end. So when we open this up, it's going to be shifted over to the end. Display flex, align item center, justify content center. So you can see that the logo and the navigation items are perfectly centered here. Now we're going to go with the navbar.nav A. And it's going to be a padding top and bottom 0 and left and right 1 rem. And then what we can do is we can give it a hover. So let's save this. So we have this cool hover effect when we go over with our cursor. So next we're going to do our landing page content. And we're going to start off with section 1. And we're going to have a margin of 7 rem and 0. This is going to give us some space between the navigation and our landing page content. So I'm going to copy this section 1 here. And then call the container. And then what we're going to do is we are going to display grid template columns, repeat to 1FR, grid gap 8 rem, align items center, and justify content center. Okay, so it's looking more responsive here and with a better image size. Okay, so now let's style we're going to grab the section 1 again, and we're going to style the H1. Okay, I'm going to give it a color. This is like our primary color that we're using for the font. Font size 36 pixels. Font weight bolder. Okay. Now let's style that section 1 paragraph. Margin, so it's going to be a margin top and bottom of 1 rem and left and right of 0, and we're going to give it a font size of 22 pixels. So now let's style the button here. So the subscribe button. Okay. So what we're going to do is we are going to display inline block. We're going to have the background color of red, font size 16 pixels. We're going to have font family Rubik, font weight bolder, margin top 15 pixels, padding 12 pixels, top and bottom, and 35 pixels left and right. Cursor pointer, and we're going to have the text color is white. We're going to give it a border radius of 40 pixels and web transition all 0.3 seconds ease, and transition all 0.3 seconds ease. So we can add a hover effect here. So we'll save that. We can change it. This is to your personal preference. So it goes a little bit darker when you hover over it. Okay, so that is the first part. So we do have this responsive feel to the website with the landing section adjusting, and we will go over the media queries here after we style up section 2. Okay, so let's put in the section 2. We'll just hop over to the HTML. It's going to be, we have text over image section, section class, section 2. Okay. So we're going to say position relative, background, and then it's going to be URL. And within our images folder, we have these 2 images. And I'm going to use the one of this colorful computer here. We're going to say margin top 50 pixels, height 600 pixels, object fit, that's going to be set to cover, and then background no repeat. So next what we're going to do is we're going to create a overlay so we can more easily read the text. So you can notice that adds this darker color with 60% opacity. And let's go to the section 2, because we have a section 2, and then we have the overlay, and then we have a div with a class section 2 inner, and that has our h3, h2, and our paragraph. So we're going to style the inner here. We're going to give it a color of white, height 100%, display flex direction is going to be column, align items center, justify content center, align text center, margin auto, and max width 860 pixels with a padding 5 rem top and bottom and left right 0. Okay, so we have our text here and it's looking a little bit better, but we can style our, let's style all of these because we're almost to the media queries section where we can finish this up. So we have section 2 inner, and then we're calling the h3, font size 2 rem, section 2 h2, that's going to be the bigger text here, and we also have the paragraph as well. Okay, so that covers everything before the media queries. And this is where we'll get to the responsive design. We can inspect it and shrink it down. Okay, so let's start with the media queries. So what we're going to do is we are going to have at media all and max width of 700 pixels. So anything bigger than 700 pixels, it's going to go back to this default styling. Okay, so let's start off with the section 1. Class dot section 1 dot container, and we're gonna say grid template columns 1fr, so that's going to give us a single column, and we're going to text align center. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shrink this down here. So see how it switches to a single column layout for this section 1. What we're going to want to do is we're going to bring this image up to the top here. Okay, so it is going to be section container div. We're going to say first child. And so that's going, and we're going to give it a order of 2. So now that moves our image above our text. And then we're going to have we're going to copy it, and we're going to say last child order -1. Okay, now let's style the image here, because it's kind of centering itself a little skewed to the left. Section 1, image, and then we're going to set it to a width of 50%. And then margin auto, so it looks a lot better here. So it's centering itself. Awesome. Alright, now we are going to style the side panel. So we have this side panel, so let's go back over to the HTML. We have this UL with a class of nav and a class of side panel, and this is what we're going to be styling here. So right now I have a display none, but we can take that off. So I'm just going to highlight this, comment it out, and see we have this side panel here, and we're going to be doing some styling to it. Okay. So we're going to call the container side panel and then the unordered list, and it's going to be display flex, flex direction column, margin top and bottom 80 pixels with left and right 0, list style none, and padding 0. Okay, and it's going to be container side panel, and then we're going to style and have, we're going to display block, and we'll get into this in the JavaScript. Okay, so the last thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to add section 2, H2, inner, and this is going to be the last of our CSS for the media queries. So this is just going to be I'll uncomment this just so you guys can see. It's gonna make this text here a little bit smaller so everything fits on the page. Alright, so let's go over to the JavaScript file that we have. And what we're going to do is we are going to type let menu open equal to false. Then we're going to have a const side pan equal to document dot query selector. And then we're going to be calling the side panel that we made in the HTML. Okay, so let's open this up so we can see everything. We're going to fix this. And let's minimize that. And then we're going to have a const body container equal to document dot get element by ID, and then it's going to be home. So remember, we have our body ID of home. Now we are going to document.add event listener, DOM content loaded width. So this is going to be checking our width of the browser. Then we're going to write a function here called width. And then we're going to have let query equal to window dot match media and we're going to say min width 701 pixels. Now we're going to have an if statement, query dot matches and if it matches, we're going to say document dot query selector dot Nav Toggler dot style display, and we're going to set that equal to none. So what this is doing is, if the min width is 701 pixels, so if it is your screen and your browser is greater than 701 pixels, we are going to display none on the Nav Toggler, so it's going to disappear, and we're going to have that full row of items that we have on our navigation. Okay, and then we're going to say else and we're going to have document.query selector dot side panel dot style display none. Okay, so let's look. All right. Whew. Okay. So now we can see, once we open up our browser here and we shrink it down, click refresh, when the browser registers that it is smaller than 701 pixels, the toggler will come up. Now what we're going to do is we are going to add the tint and the on-click event for the toggler. So let toggle nav equal to function we're going to have let get main equal to document dot get element by ID. We're going to say home, and I'm just going to copy this. We're going to change that to get tint, and we're going to get the tint ID in the HTML. So let's look at it. So we have this div with the ID of tint, and we're going to be grabbing that with the JavaScript. Next, we are going to be creating a if statement. So this goes back up to, by default, our menu open is equal to false. So when the browser is loaded, the menu will register as not open. Menu open equal to false. Side pan dot style dot display is equal to none. And then get tint dot style dot display equal to none. Then we're going to say menu open equal true. Now we're going to have else if menu open equal to true, side pan dot style dot display equal to inline block. Then we're going to say get main dot style dot display absolute. And then we are going to have get tint dot style dot display inline block. And then lastly, we are going to have menu open is equal to false. All right, so let's check and see if this works, guys. All right, so on click, so we're refreshed here and we have our expanded navigation bar. And then when we bring it down below 700 pixels, we get our hamburger icon, and when we click on it, this is was a lot of fun for me to do this in JavaScript, because when you click on it and you have your developer tools open, you can see how it goes to display inline block, and then when you close it out, it displays none. And it is looking great, guys. We can open, it's responsive, and when we open it back up above, we have our full navigation menu here again. So hopefully that helped. Again, I'll have a zip file with all the starter template, but then I'll also have created a Patreon account with the files and all of the JavaScript that goes into creating a lightbox like this. Hopefully this helped. Let me know if you like the style of video. Please comment and subscribe. Thank you so much. Good.